What if I told you that the chronic pain in your back, the autoimmune condition you've been battling, or the digestive issues that have plagued you for years might not just be physical problems? What if these conditions are actually your body's way of speaking a language you haven't learned to understand yet? This might sound revolutionary, even controversial, but according to Dr. Gabor Maté, one of the world's leading experts on trauma and healing, there's an undeniable connection between our emotional experiences and our physical health. For decades, Western medicine has treated the mind and body as separate entities. But what if this separation is the very thing that's keeping us sick? Today, we're going to explore a perspective that could fundamentally change how you view illness, pain, and healing. We're going to dive deep into the groundbreaking work of Dr. Gabor Maté and discover how emotional pain doesn't just affect our mental state. It literally reshapes our biology. Are you ready to discover what your body might be trying to tell you? Who is Dr. Gabor Maté, and why should we listen? Before we dive into this revolutionary perspective, let's understand who Dr. Gabor Maté is and why his insights carry such weight in both medical and psychological communities. Dr. Maté is a Hungarian-Canadian physician who has spent over 4 decades working with patients suffering from addiction, trauma, and chronic illness. But what makes him unique isn't just his medical background. It's his willingness to look beyond conventional medicine and explore the deeper connections between our emotional lives and physical health. His work spans multiple areas. He's treated patients in Vancouver's downtown East Side, one of North America's most concentrated areas of drug addiction. He's worked with individuals suffering from ADHD, autoimmune diseases, and cancer. Through all of this experience, he noticed patterns that traditional medicine often overlooks. Dr. Maté's approach is revolutionary because he doesn't just ask, "What's wrong with you?" Instead, he asks, "What happened to you?" This simple shift in perspective opens up entirely new possibilities for understanding and healing chronic illness. His insights aren't just theoretical. They're based on decades of clinical observation, scientific research, and his own personal journey with chronic illness. Dr. Maté himself has battled multiple health challenges, giving him both professional and personal insight into the mind-body connection. The revolutionary mind-body connection. For too long, Western medicine has operated under a fundamental misconception that the mind and body are separate systems that function independently. We treat physical symptoms with physical interventions and emotional problems with psychological approaches, rarely considering how deeply interconnected these systems actually are. But here's what Dr. Maté has discovered through his decades of practice. The separation between mind and body is an illusion. Every emotion we experience creates a cascade of biological changes. Every thought we think influences our immune system, our hormone production, and our cellular function. This isn't mystical thinking. It's hard science. Research in the field of psychoneuroimmunology has shown that our emotional states directly impact our immune function. Chronic stress, for example, suppresses immune response and increases inflammation throughout the body. Trauma literally changes our brain structure and affects how our genes are expressed. Dr. Maté explains that when we experience emotional pain, whether from trauma, chronic stress, or unresolved grief, our body doesn't just get over it. Instead, it holds onto these experiences, storing them in our tissues, our nervous system, and our cellular memory. Think about it. When you're stressed, where do you feel in your body? Your shoulders might tense up, your stomach might churn, or you might develop a headache. These aren't coincidences. They're examples of how emotional states immediately translate into physical experiences. Now imagine if that stress isn't temporary. What if it becomes chronic? What if your body is constantly flooded with stress hormones, constantly in a state of alert, constantly trying to protect you from perceived threats? How emotional pain manifests as physical illness. Dr. Maté's work reveals that chronic illness often develops when our emotional pain has nowhere else to go. When we can't express our feelings, when we suppress our needs, or when we live in a constant state of stress, our body becomes the outlet for all that unexpressed emotion. This process isn't conscious. We don't decide to develop an autoimmune condition or chronic pain. Instead, these conditions develop as our bodies attempt to communicate what our mind hasn't been able to process or express. Let's look at some specific examples of how this manifests. Autoimmune diseases. Dr. Maté has observed that many people with autoimmune conditions share certain emotional patterns. They're often people who have difficulty saying no, who put others' needs before their own, and who have learned to suppress their own emotional needs. In autoimmune diseases, the body literally attacks itself. Could this be a physical manifestation of self-rejection or self-criticism? Chronic pain. Many individuals with chronic pain conditions have histories of trauma or chronic stress. The pain often appears in areas of the body that hold emotional tension. Back pain, for instance, might be related to feeling unsupported or carrying too much responsibility. Digestive disorders. Our gut is often called our second brain because it contains more nerve cells than our spinal cord. Digestive issues frequently correlate with difficulty digesting life experiences, processing emotions, stress, or traumatic events. Cancer. While cancer has many contributing factors, Dr. Maté has noticed that many cancer patients share certain emotional patterns. Difficulty expressing anger, a tendency to put others first, and often a history of significant loss or trauma in the years preceding diagnosis. The role of stress and trauma in chronic illness. To understand how emotional pain becomes physical illness, we need to understand what chronic stress does to our body. When we experience stress, our body activates what's called the fight or flight response. This is a survival mechanism that's designed to help us deal with immediate threats. During this response, our body releases stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. Our heart rate increases, our muscles tense, and our immune system temporarily shuts down non-essential functions to focus energy on survival. This system works perfectly for short-term threats. The problem arises when this stress response becomes chronic. When we're constantly worried, constantly trying to please others, constantly suppressing our emotions, or constantly reliving past traumas, our body never gets a chance to return to its natural state of rest and repair. Dr. Maté explains that trauma, especially childhood trauma, creates a chronic state of hypervigilance. Our nervous system learns to be constantly alert for danger, even when we're safe. This chronic activation of the stress response system wreaks havoc on our physical health over time. Chronic stress suppresses immune function, increases inflammation, disrupts hormone balance, and interferes with our body's natural healing processes. It's like having your car's engine constantly revving. Eventually, something is going to break down. But here's what's particularly insightful about Dr. Maté's work. He recognizes that for many people, the stress isn't just external. It's internal. It comes from the constant battle between who we really are and who we think we need to be to survive or be loved. The people-pleasing connection. One of Dr. Maté's most significant observations is the connection between people-pleasing behaviors and chronic illness. He's noticed that many of his patients with serious health conditions share a common trait. They have difficulty saying no, setting boundaries, and prioritizing their own needs. This isn't a coincidence. People-pleasing often develops as a survival strategy in childhood. If a child learns that love and acceptance are conditional, that they're only valued when they're good, helpful, or compliant, they may carry this pattern into adulthood. The problem is that constantly putting others' needs before your own creates a chronic state of internal stress. Your authentic self, with its own needs, desires, and boundaries, is constantly being suppressed in favor of what others want or expect. Dr. Maté describes this as the cost of being nice. When we're so focused on being agreeable and avoiding conflict that we lose touch with our own authentic needs and feelings, our body pays the price. This pattern is particularly common in women, who are often socialized to be caregivers and to prioritize relationships over their own well-being. Dr. Maté has observed higher rates of autoimmune diseases in women, and he believes this socialization plays a significant role. But this isn't about blaming individuals for their illness. It's about understanding that these patterns often develop as necessary survival strategies. The child who learned to be compliant and helpful was adapting to their environment in the best way they knew how. The suppression of authentic emotions. Another crucial element in Dr. Maté's understanding of chronic illness is the suppression of authentic emotions, particularly anger. In many families and cultures, certain emotions are deemed unacceptable. Children learn early which feelings are safe to express and which ones must be hidden. Anger, in particular, is often suppressed, especially in women and in cultures that value harmony and compliance. But anger isn't just an emotion. It's also a biological process. When we feel angry, our body prepares for action. Energy builds up, ready to be expressed. When this energy has nowhere to go, when we consistently suppress our anger or other strong emotions, it doesn't just disappear. Instead, it gets stored in our body, creating tension, inflammation, and eventually illness. Dr. Maté doesn't suggest that people should become aggressive or hostile. Instead, he advocates for learning to recognize and appropriately express authentic emotions. This might mean learning to say no, setting healthy boundaries, or finding constructive ways to express frustration or disappointment. The goal isn't to become selfish or inconsiderate. It's to develop what Dr. Maté calls healthy selfishness, the ability to honor your own needs and feelings while still maintaining caring relationships with others. The immune system as an emotional barometer. One of the most fascinating aspects of Dr. Maté's work is his understanding of the immune system as more than just a defense against physical threats. He sees it as an emotional barometer, a system that responds not just to viruses and bacteria, but to our emotional state and stress levels. When we're chronically stressed, emotionally suppressed, or living in a state of internal conflict, our immune system becomes confused. It may become overactive, attacking our own tissues in autoimmune diseases. Or it may become suppressed, leaving us vulnerable to infections, cancer, or other illnesses. Dr. Maté points out that the immune system's job is to distinguish between self and not self, to recognize what belongs in our body and what doesn't. But what happens when we've lost touch with our authentic self? What happens when we've spent so long being who others want us to be that we no longer know who we really are? This disconnection from our authentic self creates a kind of biological confusion. Our immune system, like our psyche, struggles to know what to protect and what to reject. This perspective offers a completely different way of understanding autoimmune diseases. Instead of seeing them as random malfunctions, we can begin to see them as the body's attempt to restore balance and authenticity. Case studies, real stories of healing. Dr. Maté's books and lectures are filled with powerful stories of individuals who have experienced profound healing when they address the emotional roots of their physical illness. These aren't miraculous cures. They're examples of what becomes possible when we treat the whole person, not just the symptoms. One woman with rheumatoid arthritis began to heal when she finally learned to express anger that she had suppressed for decades. A man with chronic fatigue syndrome experienced significant improvement when he started setting boundaries and saying no to excessive demands on his time and energy. Another patient with multiple sclerosis found that her symptoms improved dramatically when she began therapy to address childhood trauma and learn to honor her own emotional needs instead of constantly trying to please others. These stories aren't meant to suggest that emotional healing is a cure-all or that people are responsible for causing their own illness. Instead, they illustrate the profound connection between our emotional and physical well-being and the healing that becomes possible when we address both aspects of our experience. Dr. Maté is careful to emphasize that addressing emotional factors doesn't mean abandoning medical treatment. Instead, it means expanding our understanding of healing to include both physical and emotional dimensions. The path to healing, integration, and authenticity. So what does healing look like from Dr. Maté's perspective? It's not just about eliminating symptoms or managing disease. True healing involves reconnecting with our authentic self and learning to live in a way that honors both our emotional and physical needs. This process often begins with awareness. We need to become conscious of the patterns that may be contributing to our illness. Are we constantly stressed? Do we have difficulty saying no? Are we suppressing emotions that need to be expressed? The next step is often learning to feel our emotions without being overwhelmed by them. Many people with chronic illness have learned to disconnect from their feelings as a way of coping. Healing involves gradually reconnecting with our emotional life in a safe and supported way. Setting boundaries is another crucial element. This means learning to say no when necessary, prioritizing our own needs alongside others, and creating space for rest and self-care. Dr. Maté also emphasizes the importance of addressing trauma. Many chronic illnesses have roots in past traumatic experiences that continue to affect our nervous system and stress response. Trauma-informed therapy can be an essential part of the healing process. Finally, healing involves cultivating what Dr. Maté calls authentic self-expression. This means learning to be who we really are, rather than who we think we need to be loved or accepted. A new paradigm for health and healing. Dr. Gabor Maté's work represents a fundamental shift in how we understand health and illness. Instead of seeing chronic disease as random misfortune or purely genetic destiny, we can begin to see it as our body's way of communicating about deeper imbalances in our lives. This perspective doesn't blame individuals for their illness, nor does it suggest that positive thinking alone can cure disease. Instead, it offers a more complete understanding of the factors that contribute to illness and the possibilities for healing. When we understand the connection between emotional pain and physical illness, we open up new avenues for healing. We can address not just symptoms but root causes. We can treat not just the disease, but the whole person. This approach requires courage. The courage to look honestly at our lives, our relationships, and our patterns. It requires compassion for ourselves and for the ways we've learned to survive. And it requires patience, because healing the deep connections between mind and body takes time. But for those willing to embark on this journey, the rewards can be profound. Not just relief from physical symptoms, but a deeper sense of authenticity, connection, and wholeness. The question isn't whether your emotions affect your health. Science has already proven that they do. The question is, are you ready to listen to what your body is trying to tell you? Because sometimes the path to physical healing begins with emotional truth. If this content touched something deep within you, I have a special request. First, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. This way you'll receive all our content about neuroscience, psychotherapy, and integral healing, knowledge that can literally transform your life. Second, leave a comment down below. Share which insight impacted you the most. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to read to begin their own healing journey. Third, and perhaps most importantly, share this video. Think of that person you know, maybe a friend who always puts everyone else before herself, a family member struggling with chronic illness, or someone who lives stressed and can't say no. Your simple act of sharing could be the first step in that person's transformation journey. And of course, if this content was valuable to you, leave your like. This helps us reach more people who need this message. Remember, together, we can revolutionize how we understand health and healing. Your action matters more than you can imagine. Thank you for being part of this mission to bring knowledge and healing to the world.